in life, many times our projections about the future are not even based on who we really are. Many times what we want for the future is not truly what is for us. Many times we are bombarded and oppressed by other people's energies for our own life. I love to use examples because I feel like they really help to show you exactly what I mean if some of my words are confusing or out of context. So for one example, there are a lot of parents out there are a lot of families out there that teach their children about not trusting their heart. There are a lot of families out there who they have this mentality that life has to be a certain way, whether that's good or whether it's bad. There are many parents who are teaching their children to not trust their own voice because they don't like what their child's voice is telling them. There are many people out there who are walking around in life behaving like their parents, good or bad. There are many people out there who have had certain energies projected onto them, and they have developed this crust of a personality that isn't even who they are. And I find that so saddening because why would the universe, why would a higher power, why would life bring you into existence just to be a perfect copy of the person who came before you? That person already exists. They're already living their life. They are already living their purpose. They are already doing whatever it is that they feel called to do. So why would the universe make an exact replica of that person in you? So many times we tell each other, you need to be like this person. We tell each other that, why don't you emulate so-and-so? Why don't you model yourself after so-and-so? Look how successful they are. They get such great grades. They get A's, they get B's, nothing less than a B. We talk to each other like this. Even friends talk to each other like this. Why don't you try doing this my way? Why don't you try to make the decisions that I make or that so-and-so makes? And I'll be honest, I fall into that category too. Sometimes I really reflect on myself and I notice that there are parts of me that really are not natural to me. They are energies that have been passed down. They are traditional elements that have been passed on through the generations. And nothing wrong with that. That's how families teach each other. That's how there's a sense of continuity of knowing what to do. However, I'm not my family. I'm not just my cultural background. I'm not just the religion that was passed on to me. And for any of you who understand what I'm talking about, sometimes it is very stifling. And it feels in some ways oppressive when as a child you're growing up and you just follow because you don't have, any idea that you're not supposed to just follow. And when you grow up, when you leave home, when you go to school, maybe out of the country, out of the state, you experience life from a different perspective, you realize that I don't want to follow anymore. I don't want to allow the projections that have been given to me, the energies of maybe my elders, the energies of all of my ancestors. Maybe I don't really want that for myself. It doesn't matter if it's good, it doesn't matter if it's bad. It's not true for self. And when you realize who you are, when you realize this is not for me, this is me, then there's such a beautiful freedom that comes with that. And sometimes, you know, there are parts of you that might remember, like, that you really respected what you've been taught. You might have really respected the people who told you certain things, and everything that was done was really to help you to grow into a good person. Everything that was done was shared from, you know, what they were taught by their parents. And it just puts everything in a different light. But I really want to share that these projections are not real. In the same way that a child knows that their parent is lying to them, and the parent is like, no, I'm not. And they, you know, they try to get away with certain things, and they don't like that the child knows that this is not the truth. And they try everything they can to, you know, make the child believe what they have to say. Or a perfect example is, you know, when I was younger, I grew up very religious, you know, and I was born into like a family culture where church was a huge thing. And it was sacrilegious to not want to go to church. You know, it was like the most disrespectful thing you could ever say to question too much. And I remember I asked my grandmother a question. I cannot even remember to this day what the question was, but I know it was super philosophical. And I asked her a question, and she was just like dumbfounded. You know, she was just like, she didn't know what the answer was. And her response was just basically blind faith. Just trust, because that's what we've always done. Just believe everything that the Bible says, just because that is what we know. And I'm not criticizing that, because I believe that, you know, the Bible is a great book, and it has a lot of truth about life, about the world, about people, about who we really are. It's in there. But there are also some questionable actions, you know, and this is not a religious, you know, evangelical video. I'm not trying to, like, you know, convert you or anything like that. But I just use that as an example, because in that situation, you know, me and my natural curiosity, my natural inquisitiveness, and my desire to seek the truth, to really understand what was going on. I asked a question, and the person who was really like hard on me about being religious and following certain doctrines didn't have an answer. And a lot of times in life, that's what people experience, where who they naturally are comes up, and they ask questions and they try to find the truth, and they're either dismissed. No one wants to have the conversation because they don't know, or they make the child feel really bad about themselves, and they really inevitably force that child to not trust anything that they have to say. They force friends, they force family, they force people that are in their circle to not trust the voice that really was given to them by God, by a higher power, the voice that is leading us all through life. And so as I think about projections, as I think about what we project for the future, what we really believe the future is supposed to look like, what we really believe we are supposed to look like in the future in terms of what we're supposed to have, what we're supposed to do, who we're supposed to be. Many times the foundation for that isn't even really true. If you were a child who just had so much love in your heart, you had love, you were friendly, you wanted to just be there for everyone, you wanted to just be liberated, help people, you were just naturally pure at heart, and maybe in one situation you had a very traumatic event happen to you, you lost someone, or you grew up with people who did not understand why you were so happy and so loving, and they made you feel bad about it all the time, then when you grow up, you might become one of those robots who you just kind of get up, go to work, and the people in your life, or just maybe life in general and your outlook on it, has forced that natural part of you to be suppressed. And so everything from that point, from what you believe needs to happen in the future, what you believe you need to do, what you believe you need to achieve, it's all based on something horrible that happened to you or certain influences that you truly believed in. And it's never too late to change those projections. It's never too late to get rid of projections altogether. When I consider this coronavirus and just thinking about last November, last December, how the world was a completely different place, what good are projections? What good are these plans that go so far into the future? I'm very successful with being a planner. I'm very successful and I have a lot of skill with organizing events, trips, meetings, meetups, all of that kind of stuff. And I recently heard a quote, and it was very interesting because it said that you don't need to trust in life to plan. You just need to trust in the person. But when you trust in life, then you don't have to plan. And of course, that sounds, on a superficial level, like, what do you mean when we don't have to plan? What do you mean we don't have to be organized? What do you mean we don't have to think into the future? But on a deeper level, we're going through still a pandemic where many of us have no idea what the future holds. There are a lot of different conspiracy theories, which I am not going to even touch and get into, but there are a lot of just different people talking about what the future is going to be. If we're going to have to get bodily checks, if we're going to have to get a doctor's note, if we're going to be vaccinated. We hear about things happening in other countries like Taiwan and Korea about how they are treating the people who have the virus, people who are, getting locked into their homes if they are infected or something, mobile tracking devices. And this is a whole different world than we have seen in the past. And even if you could predict the future, even if you are a fortune teller, even if you are someone who is a prophet, none of us knows everything. No one knows everything. And so coming back once again to my point about projections, who knows what the future is going to be like? Who knows what you're going to be doing next year, in 5 years, next week? Who knows what laws are going to be erected, what bills are going to be passed, what events are going to take place. And if we base all of our life on what we are projecting into the future, what we are predicting, we miss out on a lot of beautiful opportunities to just be here in this space, in the present moment, in the here and now, you know? And those projections usually are just not real. They're not realistic. We imagine a trip we might take at a certain point. We imagine, who we're going to marry. I know that for a lot of little girls, that's something they dream about. Who am I going to marry? When am I going to have kids? Teenagers thinking about that. Before a person has even become anything or a person has even learned about themselves, it's, putting themselves on this train into the future on when they're going to be, belong to someone else. I use the example of the child who was loving and friendly and full of life, and maybe life challenged them in certain ways, or their families were built in certain ways that they just grew up and they lost all of that or suppressed all of that. And so all of their projections from that point on go along with what the family unit wants, but it's not even true for who they are. And those projections end up becoming this thing that you're chasing, but it's really all illusion. I believe that projections are very deceptive, because what happens when that doesn't come true? What happens if none of your projections come true? Then you're living life assuming and expecting that X, Y, and Z is going to happen, instead of just, as the saying goes, letting life unfold. And so I would just leave you and conclude with this. I really hope that this helped someone. I hope that we all as a world community can come back to the 100% truth of who we are. Not just a little bit of truth, but the 100% truth of who we are. Because our thoughts, sometimes what we think about, what we believe to be important, isn't always important. Many times what we project into the future, what we predict, what we are holding on to as this must happen for me to be considered valuable. This must happen for me to be considered worthy. This must happen for me to be considered a man. This must happen for me to be considered a great woman. Those are all illusions, because we're so much more than just a job. We're so much more than just a career, a title, a wealthy person, someone who is impoverished, someone who has a certain sexual orientation, someone who's part of the 3 major religions. We're so much more than that. And if we stop trying to project things into the future from a foundation that's probably based on, in many cases, a lot of lies and a lot of untruths or a lot of hurt, maybe we can really just give ourselves the space and the freedom to just be who we are. And that's something that it doesn't take any predictions. It doesn't take any anxiety. There's no stress involved. When each of us shows up in the world as 100% ourselves, what could be more beautiful than that? So I wish you a very blessed and happy day. I hope that you are at peace. I hope that this pandemic situation is really giving you the time and the space that you may have needed to just rewind, reflect, go within and be silent, to spend time with the people that you actually want to spend time with, and not just, your coworkers, and just be happy.